Joanne Yepsen, Mayor of Saratoga Springs and candidate for re-election. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll start with a pretty broad question. What would you say is one or two of the achievements that you're most proud of in your first term as mayor?
So we've been as mayor in a term that's even less than 2 years so far, because these are 2-year terms, and there are so many. We have had so many accomplishments in the first year and a half, having to do with open government issues and having to do with all of our promises that we stated 2 years ago when we were running. I couldn't be more pleased with how much we've accomplished in such a short time, and I owe a lot of thanks to a lot of people. But we were talking about balance between growth and open space, and there's many things that I could turn to regarding that. We have opened up government, and I've started 15 new committees so that we can have more tentacles out into the community and represent the interests of the people better. Having direct access with my constituents has been a priority for me, and we've accomplished that in many ways. We've accomplished that by taking the barricade down in the mayor's office, literally. So we now have a wide open office policy and actually physically an open door. People can come in without an appointment and take advantage of my open office hours. We are we report back to our constituents. We have open meetings all the time, and it's a wonderful two-way street now of the constituents really feeling, hopefully, that they have a voice in City Hall, and then me also reaching out and being resourceful with whoever I need to ensure that I have the information and the background that I need to make good decisions as we move forward. We have cleaned up the housing authority mess, and that is now on a good track, and we're serving our constituents in the low-income realm in a much more positive way. We have worked very hard with veterans, and we have ended veterans' homelessness in my first term. In fact, in the first year that this program existed, the president's wife, Michelle Obama, sent out a note to all the mayors asking us to sign a pledge. I did just that. I put together a housing task force, and the first order of business was to identify the veterans that were homeless in Saratoga Springs and find them permanent housing, and that's exactly what we've done. The labor contract mess that I walked into was 7 unresolved labor contracts. We have 7 labor unions in City Hall, and I'm proud to sit here today to say that through the charter, the mayor is responsible for collective bargaining, and we have 5 settled and 2 more to go, and we're very close to getting those settled and passed by the City Council, hopefully. We have also completed our very first comprehensive plan in 14 years. Now, this is a document, according to our charter, that is supposed to be reviewed and updated every 5 years. So you can see how much time has lagged. The committee was already in place when I started as mayor, so I did not appoint anyone to that committee, but clearly it was my job to finish the work. And the committee came back to the council with a final work product with 53 amendments they asked us to consider. So we had, as a council, had to decide how to move forward. And we did it in a public forum. We did it with 4 public workshops, and we got the job done. And now we have a passed document that we can work with for our city planning in the future. We also secured the approval by the City Council to purchase and start a conservation easement on 166 acres on the West Avenue called the Pitney Farm. The reason why this is so important is because it's the last working farm in the city, and it's a tremendous amount of acreage. It's also in one of the most beautiful scenic views you'll ever imagine. So our goal there is to keep it agriculture only and open space and passive recreation. And we're using $1.3 million approximately out of our bonding authority account that the referendum in the city passed with 75% of the voters saying yes to $5 million set aside for open space preservation. So the part of that is being used for the Pitney So we're getting ready next year to probably start a whole nother referendum effort because we're just about out of the 5 million. We also saved the funding for and opened the waterfront park. So now the constituents have full access, public access to Saratoga Lake for passive recreation, for picnicking, for kayaking, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback about that. We also secured funding for a large section of the Greenbelt Trail, and that is the Geyser Road. So now we're starting with a Safe Routes to School aspect of that trail, and then the 1.6 million that my administration received from the state will go towards constructing a wide multi-use trail from the Milton Town line to the Spa State Parks. So the connectivity piece is something that's really coming together now. The connectivity between trails, walkability, and biking downtown. And that's just a few of our accomplishments. But I'm proud to say that we've hit just about all our targets with economic development, with the balance between growth and open space, with the veterans, with being more inclusive and accessible to the people of this city, and ensuring that we protect and move forward some of our special places.
And through all of that, looking back on your first term, would you say there's anything that you're disappointed with or would have liked to change?
Well, there's always, I'm not one to hear no, and there are a couple of projects that are still in the works. Beekman Street is an area that we need to get back to. There was a zoning proposal change for that area. It was too much, too fast. It wasn't what the people in the neighborhoods wanted there. But we need to develop the artist district in a much more comprehensive way. And I'm looking at the whole city to get involved in this. And it won't be just Beekman Street. But I've put together the first commission of the arts together for this city ever. And so this 20-member commission of the arts is going to look at all the creative economy possibilities for our city, including getting Beekman Street back on track in terms of an artist district and a destination for tourists and residents alike.
Great, so looking forward, if reelected, you'll have another 2 years to set the top priorities for the city. What would those priorities be looking to the next 2 years?
Well, one area that we're making really good headway on, but it's become a real priority, is affordable housing. And the homeless situation, and starting Code Blue, which is another huge accomplishment that I'm very proud of, is a start. It's a start because Code Blue is saving lives, but it's also creating a continuum of care in the housing area. So we get people to come into Code Blue who are homeless, and they begin building trust with the volunteers, with the staff, and they start agreeing to services that they never imagined. In fact, I was just at a picnic to thank all the volunteers with the Vet Help program, and I was talking to homeless people that are now housed and recovered alcoholics, for instance, and he kept saying, you know, he could have never gotten a job until he figured out how to stop drinking. He could never have found a home. So getting those health problems taken care of, those mental health problems taken care of, but a housing problem is a huge part of their self-esteem. So if there's a roof over their heads and somebody that cares about them and a path forward, I think we can help more and more people in this city. Once they are ready to have permanent housing, there isn't enough housing that's affordable in Saratoga Springs. I hear it every day that we're outpricing ourselves right out of the city. So we need to continue, in my second term, working on that continuum of care and making sure that we have more of a variety of price ranges and price points for housing in Saratoga.
Great. So turning a little bit to the election politics, your opponent in this campaign has promised to end the, quote, dysfunctional politics and the political bickering on the city council. Another candidate has called the infighting on the city council, quote, the worst he's ever seen. We're wondering what your thoughts on those two assertions would be.
How easily people forget. It was probably 10 years ago that was the worst I had ever seen. My leadership is a style of making sure that everyone gets their time in the city council table. My power is setting the agenda as a mayor, just like every other mayor has been. And once that agenda is set, it's up to the council members to determine what their behavior is, what words they say, what actions they want to take, and we're all 5 equal votes in this commissioner form of government. I have the gavel. I have the power to set the order of the agendas, and certainly if there's a more effective, efficient way to do this, I'm happy to take suggestions in terms of how to set the agenda. But once I turn it over to a commissioner to follow through on his or her agenda, it's clearly they're accountable to the 28,000 people of this city, just like I am. We are not accountable to each other. We report in with each other, but we're accountable to the people of this city. And when I'm making my reports or setting my agenda, that's what I'm thinking about, is what I need to report on or update or get past to help the people of this city, or to make it better in some cases, or start a new initiative. And let's face it, everyone is elected in their own accord. So if they're being elected, the people want what they have to offer. And hopefully the people have been well educated about what we can all offer, and a little debate is never bad. What is bad is when you don't have full respect of one another. And so I try to act with great respect, and I would hope that my colleagues would as well.
Right. So turning a bit to the sort of substantive issues going on in the area right now, do you have any thoughts on the new Saratoga PAC and what influence that might be having on
Sure.
politics?
So PACs are new to Saratoga Springs, and I think this is why this is getting so much attention. Saratoga PAC is a new phenomenon here, but it's not. PACs are not a new phenomenon, say, on the federal level. You hear about it all the time on the presidential races. In fact, Joe Biden's PAC, Super PAC, has put out a wonderful ad to help him think about running for president, supporting him. But he, in the news this morning, I heard that he's asked his Super PAC to take that ad off air because he wants to make this decision privately with his family this weekend instead of having the media affect his decision or anybody else's. So I think that's commendable, but it's not always realistic. There are going to be PACs. I have worked with Kirsten Gillibrand very closely, a great deal, and she has a very good PAC, a PAC that's called Off the Sidelines. So a PAC, what that means is that there's a theme in which you're raising money to accomplish an action. To her case, it's let's raise a lot of money so that we can convince good women who may not have the funding support to get out there and run for office or get involved in a campaign. And we've had many events in the area, in the region, in upstate New York to encourage women to get involved and to think about running for office. And I have a lot of proteges right now who are working with me on this campaign who are eager to learn so that they one day can run for office. What I think is different is, number one, it's local, and that seems a little odd. Like, why would we need a PAC in our little city of 28,000? Clearly, in speaking with some of the members of this PAC, they have not felt that their viewpoints have been represented, and they're apparently frustrated. And I also think there's other method. This is their method of having a voice. There's lots of ways to have a voice in my experience, and raising a lot of money is not necessarily the only way. And I think the other reason why this is getting very controversial is because of the amount of money they're raising. And we don't want our votes to be bought. I want to get elected because people like and think I'm doing a good job. I don't want the money to influence people's choices and decisions, and the truth and what they hear about candidates should come from the candidate. And we have the accountability to the voters to make sure we report in as to what we're doing as their public service officials, and if the media helps and these opportunities of being filmed helps get that word out, then our voters should be able to decide for themselves who they want to see elected. So I think that's the rub here, is that there's some sense that this money is going to influence votes, and that's not acceptable. But I have already met with them, and I have, kind of had a dialogue about what I'm doing to set the record straight, because we don't want anybody to get the wrong information, and so I wanted them to hear it from the horse's mouth, exactly where I stand on issues, exactly what I plan to do about issues, how I've proceeded and made decisions in the past, and it's been very good and open, and I'm feeling very encouraged that we can have a lot more of those open conversations. Everybody wants input into the process of appointments, and they didn't know, for instance, that I have a very open process of appointments. So when I'm looking to appoint someone to boards or committees, I seek resumes, I reach out and call people, people call me, give me suggestions. I then look at resumes and then have an open interviewing process, and I've done this since I was elected the first time as mayor. We interview candidates for those positions, and then I make a final decision with the help of my staff or other volunteers. So I've encouraged everyone in the city to let me know if they have someone that would like to serve on one of the land use boards, on one of the chartered commissions or boards that the mayor appoints to, or any of the 15 new committees that I've put together to get more people involved in having a voice in the governmental process in this city. So I think that has been a good message, and one that I will continue with for my next term.
So our next question would be about the proposed new additions to the Saratoga National Golf Course. I'm wondering what your thoughts and stance would be on that.
Sure. So do you remember when they came forward first, at least one of the most significant times they came forward with a proposal to expand on the already existing very large building that sits on the golf course, I think on almost 400 acres of land. Don't quote me on that. But the proposal is now to expand on the building that they already have and to put a hotel there. And the first time they came forward was during the comp plan workshops, the public workshops that we were having. And it was not, I don't want the comprehensive plan process or the council members to be focused on project specifics during that. The council needed to look at the 53 amendments, but keep in mind that the comp plan is an overall vision for our city. It's a goal by which we want to reach. And it is making some specific decisions about what kind of growth we want to see in what sections of our city. So the applicant actually withdrew it out of the comp plan discussions, realizing that was not the right place or time to be bringing this up. Then they came back with an idea of a resort overlay, which didn't seem to get much support from the council. They then came back with this hotel idea through what they're calling a zoning amendment. And that is the next procedure that we're going to have to send through the process. So when I took office, I made it really clear that every applicant has the right to go through our legal city process, but they're all going to be treated equally. Whether you're the city center authority, or whether you're a small business downtown, or whether you're a high-powered attorney who is working on behalf of a client. Everybody follows the same process and goes through the process in which our city has set up. So they're in the process right now of trying to come up with language that the council would find merit in sending to the planning board. We did this once already, and I felt it was sufficient enough to send it to the planning board as a merit for review, and that's all we were doing. We weren't saying yes or no, but just let's take a look at this and ask the planning board to do a closer review. That's what the planning board's job is. So that has happened once. The applicant since has decided to change the wording and the language significantly enough that the process has to start over. So I just want to remind people that I don't work for Saratoga National. I work for the city of Saratoga Springs, and what I'm going to do is keep listening to the people and the small businesses downtown and making sure that if this project moves forward, it's going to be in a conservation way. Remember, I was on the Saratoga Plan Board and came from the open space perspective. So this has got to be a very good conservation easement attached with this, and it's got to be 3,000 feet off the road. There's lots of requirements that I would have in order to move this project to the planning board, even for review. However, what it's currently zoned for now is something I'm not in favor of. So a zoning amendment makes sense to me. I don't want a housing, a housing, what's it called? I just lost my train of thought. You can edit that out.
Yeah, we can move on. Don't worry about it.
No, it's zoned for one house per every 2 acres. Housing development. That's what's going to happen there if we don't adjust the zoning to accommodate something that will actually be better for the preservation of more land. Because the housing development is they could put in a proposal tomorrow for that, and that's what it's zoned for. That to me is sprawl in the wrong area, in the wrong direction, and should not be allowed. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking about sprawl and this idea that Saratoga Springs is a city in the country, and that's been to a lot of people the identity of the place for a long time. How do you, in a larger sense, balance the idea between the city and the country and the need for economic growth and development?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I've been doing for 10 years now. I've been advocating for that balance, and just remember that economic growth and open space doesn't necessarily mean it's mutually exclusive. Economic growth doesn't always come in building with bricks and mortar. Economic growth comes in all sorts of ways. It's job creation. I'm working on strengthening a bill that was just passed on the city council level for apprentices in the trades. That's job creation. That's economic growth. Having this creative economy take off with our new Commission on the Arts and being the star in this 5-county region of creative economy and attracting more high-tech companies and film industries, that's economic growth. So there's a lot of things I'm working on currently that will establish more economic growth, including something called the Greenbelt Trail. And when you asked earlier what would my priorities be, we only got into affordable housing, but the Greenbelt Trail and being more walkable and connected, not necessarily with cars, to get around downtown is another priority of mine. We won an award this year for the bronze level for being the most walkable city in one of the most walkable cities in the country, but we only got the bronze level. I'm going for the gold next time. And so we need to focus on the completion of the Greenbelt Trail, and we're doing it section by section. And I'm going to continue to work with all the volunteers and different funding sources to make sure that happens. The other part we've done is to concentrate primarily on downtown as the core area of development. And you'll see the downtown core growing some, but not out into the Greenbelt. And concentrating on keeping the downtown vibrant by taking care of the homeless and working on that issue, by supporting small business and small business promotion. I've done that, and we're going to continue to do that. Making sure that we concentrate on the industries that are important to this city. The racing industry. The racing industry is something I've worked on for 10 years, and I've been on the front lines with state legislatures and the governor, and ensuring that NYRA has a strong 10-year plan, 20-year plan down the road, and working closely with the city on that is a priority for me for the next term. Economic development is not necessarily bricks and mortar, although we get applications daily from people that want to invest in this city, and that's a good problem to have.
Okay, and so the last question on this topic would be parking, clearly big issue in the city, big issue for your first term and moving forward. And specifically the parking garage debate that's been happening. What's your take on what should happen with parking?
Well, when I took office, again, it was already in motion through the City Center Authority Board, of which I'm an ex officio member. We allowed them to go through the process just like everybody else, and tried to assist them with design changes as they went along. There were very few changes that were made, and by the time they got to the zoning board, it was declined because of issues regarding ordinances, and the planning board had certain things they needed to see happen before a site plan came back. And now the DRC, the Design Review Commission, which is unique to our city because we're so eager to preserve our history and historic preservation is a big priority of mine, to make sure that that's woven into everything we do, because I really do feel like that's one of the reasons why we're so successful as a city, because we have the historic charm, because we are walkable, because we have the arts and interesting cultural things to do here. It's the package of assets that makes our city great. And we need to continue to promote those package of assets and build on them. But the parking is an issue, and I've come up with 2 major solutions to address these problems. The DRC, as I was just saying, has asked the applicant, who's the city center authority, to go back to the drawing board. The mass and scale is too much for our city. The overhang over Maple Avenue is not appropriate for that area. It's going to cut off one section of the city, the High Rock Park, the Musan House, the Farmers Market, off from the rest of downtown. My goal is to make sure everything flows and it is connected, literally, so you could walk from the Farmers Market to downtown easily without getting into this major, literally hitting a brick wall. So the idea of a standalone parking garage is not going over well in the city, and I think the City Center Authority has tried now for years to get this through. But the design is just not acceptable to the majority of the people that I talk to in the city. And again, that's my job, is to represent the city constituents, the people of this city. What I heard loud and clear was that they, it started sort of back in the spring, really shouting out loud and clear that they wanted to see a better design of how can we solve our parking problem but not have this large overpass, have it cut off street activity from one section of our city to another. So we went at great lengths to work with the council and to work with my planning staff to form an RFP proposal. It was a request for proposals, and now we know that we have received 2 proposals from that request, and I'm very eager to have a technical review team look at them and make recommendations to the council as to which one we would pick and which one would most solve the parking needs as well as the design needs and the mixed use economic approach. The other priority that I've put forward for parking is to look at not just the High Rock lot as an option for parking, but lots of other lots as well. I've already had meetings and conversations with some private lot owners and developers about what we could do on their properties. We have put together a parking task force, which will be spearheaded by members of the business community, working closely and collaboratively with city council and city hall departments. And together we're going to do a inventory of everything we have. How can we restructure it so that we can get more parking out of the spaces we already have? How can we redirect or restripe or recount the number of spaces so that we can increase the parking? So sort of reorganizing is one goal this parking task force will have, but also then looking at new options, new possible additions to the current parking inventory will be another priority for the task force, and we expect recommendations to come out of them in the next couple of months.
Okay, well thank you. That's about all the questions we have. So Mary Yepsen, thank you so much for your time, and thanks again.
Thank you.